Hello there, you're watching The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. Coming up this afternoon, the World Health Organization is raising concerns about the measles outbreak here in Ghana as it steps up efforts to make funding available for the procurement of 3 key essential vaccines which have been short in supply across the country.
There has been an extension for Ghana to still benefit from the support from Gavi, and what Gavi of course provides is that it has ensured that vaccines are available at a much lower cost for low-income countries.
We'll get some reactions to this and bring you the latest shortly. Also, Ghana's macroeconomic indicators are shooting back as inflation has moved from its peak at 54.1% to 53.8%. That's the latest at where we are now as a country. But what are the indications?
If you have come to a point where as a country you cannot pay your debts and you are going out there asking for debt forgiveness, at least you have a responsibility to cut down on your own expenditure, the expenditure that led you into that crisis.
We also have the take of the opposition National Democratic Congress on that as you see it. But fighting extremism is also on the agenda this afternoon. We'll tell you about the US-led special military training exercise aimed at helping Ghana and other African countries to fight violent extremism. We're talking about Operation Flintlock here on The Pulse. Plus, assess its impact on the nation and our security. You're watching The Pulse. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Digni Lu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Don't forget that we're on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. This is The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sogah. We are back with the details shortly. Please stay. And let's start off by talking about the vaccine shortage, because this afternoon JoyNews is learning that more funding will be made available through the World Health Organization for Ghana to procure more vaccines to shore up its child immunization program. Over the last few days, the country has been receiving some supplies from neighboring countries as a stopgap measure to deal with the vaccine shortage that has hit the country. In the last few days, health experts have reported of cases of measles in parts of the northern region, but the Volta region is the latest to join that fray, raising concerns of a possible health risk and impact on the entire system. Days ago, the sector minister, Kweku Agyeman, addressed the press, indicating that some funding was made available to UNICEF to procure more vaccines. He assures that the vaccines will arrive in the next few weeks to deal with the shortage.
Some vaccine shortages in the country since the last quarter of 2022. The vaccines in short supply are BCG, measles, rubella, and oral polio vaccine, OPV. This shortage is nationwide. The recent shortage in vaccines for measles, as regrettably as it is symptomatic of the steady global decline in measles vaccination since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And permit me to quote from a WHO recent publication on the subject that puts the challenge we are dealing with into perspective. And I will quote: measles vaccination coverage has steadily declined since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, a record high of nearly 40 million children missed a measles vaccine dose. 25 million children missed their first dose, and an additional 14.7 million children missed their second dose. A joint publication by the World Health Organization and the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports. This decline is a significant setback in global progress towards achieving and maintaining measles elimination, and leaves millions of children susceptible to infection. And Ghana's Ministry of Health has been making efforts to ensure we secure adequate stocks of vaccines despite this global challenge. We have made all necessary efforts to ensure that despite these challenges, we secure adequate stocks within the next few weeks. It is important to correct the erroneous impression that there have been deaths from measles in Ghana recently. For the avoidance of doubt, there have been no deaths from the recently recorded spike in measles cases. Indeed, there have been no deaths since 2003 in our country, though we have recorded cases annually. Finally, despite the challenge, Ghana's immunization coverage remains among the best in the world, and in 2021, we recorded 95% coverage. Working with UNICEF, we are fast-tracking the processes, and it is expected that vaccines will be supplied in the next few weeks, all things being equal. The Minister of Health, ladies and gentlemen, will ensure that we stay on track with the immunization record and quickly overcome these bottlenecks.
Well, from JoyNews sources, part of the challenge confronting the country was the donor support through the Vaccine Alliance of Gavi, which was almost winding up this year, a reason for which our country was not able to access some fundings to complete the procurement processes for the essential vaccines. But now JoyNews is learning that would no longer be a challenge, as the World Health Organization is indicating that an agreement has been reached for an extension of that funding source. I've been speaking exclusively with the Deputy Director General for the World Health Organization, Dr. Ansu Banerjee, who explains to us that issue will be dealt with. He, however, wants the government of Ghana to increase and prioritize matters relating to child immunization.
So what has happened during the pandemic is that many of the companies that produced vaccines had to shift some of their production lines for routine immunization towards production for COVID vaccine. And that has, let's say, from 2021, let's say, when the vaccine was started to be manufactured, has of course shifted, let's say, the global availability of some of the vaccines. Of course, we are coming out of that situation now, and so it is important that countries reinvest in accelerating the immunization towards immunization coverage. WHO has been working, and I think around 20 countries have been identified as priority countries to look at bringing immunization coverage back up to where we were before the pandemic. And this, of course, links very much to what I highlighted around the increased number of children from 19 to 25 million by 2020 that didn't have either a single or not all of their doses of immunization. So I know that the Ministry of Health in Ghana has made arrangements, and I think vaccines are coming into the country to allow to recapture, let's say, some of the losses in immunization coverage.
And for instance, some of the multilateral platforms available to us that are supposed to extend help to us through, for instance, Gavi. In the context of Ghana, for instance, we understand that that help will no longer be available for us in the coming years through the grants and support schemes that we get. So how do we approach some of these issues? Because the potential that it may affect the universal health coverage will definitely come up.
So I think in relation to Gavi, there has been an extension for Ghana to still benefit from the support from Gavi. And what Gavi, of course, provides is that it has ensured that vaccines are available at a much lower cost for low-income countries in order for them to be able to introduce it. And this is a huge advancement in equity, I think, because every child globally should have access to the same vaccines in order to protect, let's say, itself from him or herself from life-saving or diseases, let's say. So this has been a tremendous achievement from a global public health perspective. Now, Ghana indeed needs to look at how to finance, let's say, 100% of their vaccines after a couple of years. The Gavi support is still going on. But of course, Ghana has made tremendous progress because the way that Gavi works is not that you benefit from vaccines up to, let's say, 2023 or 2024, and then you pay 100% of the vaccines. What happens is that you slowly start co-financing the vaccine. So Ghana actually already pays for most of the share of the vaccines that are coming through Gavi to the country. So it's going to be a little additional investment that the government needs to make, because Ghana has been one of the front runners, let's say, in benefiting from the Gavi provided schemes. So the immunization program here has been very strong. Ghana introduced many of these vaccines already in 2005, 6, 7, 8, and has been co-financing those over the last years. So I think there will still be a challenge for Ghana, but it's going to be a small additional cost to what Ghana has already invested in the immunization program.
So indeed, there will be challenges, but how do we deal with that, and how do we show up our child immunization program? I want to bring in now Dr. John Odebi-Apia, who's the outgoing president of the Pediatric Society of Ghana. Thank you, sir, for your time here on the Pulse on the Joy News channel. So, of course, we're still recording some cases down south. Initially, the outbreak was up north. First of all, what do you make of this assurance coming through from the World Health Organization that funding will be made available?
Let me first thank you for having me and then hosting on behalf of Pediatric Society. I would like to express our sincere gratitude and joy to the news that we have heard, because all we're fighting for, or all we're asking for, is a piece of the cake for children. And that piece of the cake is to ensure that their health is secured. And this is extremely good news. And you remember when the minister actually was in Parliament, he actually requested or appealed for all of us to help advocate for support for Ghana. And we're at a point where all of us need to appreciate what is going on. And this is where we all need to be. All of us will have to be on the ground, join the ministry, join the minister, and ensure that wherever we can make appeals, wherever we can advocate for support for ensuring that vaccines are made available for children, we all go in there and we speak one language to ensure that children in Ghana will not be left behind. Yes, we know that there have been outbreaks. There was an initial outbreak which was reported from the northern region, but we know that it was not only the northern region. We're having some cases, but the problem in other regions like Ashanti, and then now we've also mentioned the Volta region from, I think, the last few days, is the fact that we are unable, message news from our colleagues from the field is that we are just unable to confirm most of these cases. And this is where there's another challenge. In fact, it's important that we confirm these cases. The other thing is that with the outbreaks, we are going to continue to see these outbreaks. And we have also, in the statements that Pediatric Society have issued, we have appealed to government and also our developmental partners to support us with diagnostic equipment, help us track and trace the cases so that we can identify them early, institute infection prevention measures both at home and then also in hospitals, just like we did for COVID, to be able to arrest the situation and also care for those who are at risk. So these are some of the things that the society is actually focusing on.
Indeed, and all of this would have been averted if we had the vaccines in place. But speaking about Gavi itself, the Vaccine Alliance, how much of a big deal is it, talking about the immense contribution they play in our child immunization program? What do we stand to gain from that donor support that we're almost missing out on this year?
Yeah, so I guess as the minister and the deputy director general of WHO also highlighted, the fact that we're meeting headwinds, and these headwinds were the fact that production of vaccines were actually going down generally in the world as a result of COVID. Companies shifting their attention to address the pandemic, and that's normal. And secondly, also, Ghana's economy actually we've suffered in recent time. And we all know the exchange rate and then the challenges we have. So definitely that was going to affect the vaccines. But I think we should have also made plans far ahead in trying to address that. So yes, we don't want to focus on where the challenges are. We know the challenges. So moving forward, what can we do? And this is where it's important that all our partners like Gavi continue to provide the support so Ghana can recover fully from the economic shock and then also the pandemic situation of vaccine production. We can recover from that situation. But again, our position again is to make sure that the vaccines are here and everything we can do to ensure that we get the vaccines in terms of advocacy, in terms of ensuring that families bring their kids out for vaccination, and also in terms of addressing the outbreaks. Those are our focus. And this is where we don't want to lose sight of our mandate.
Just for being fixated on the issue of the vaccine funding, but what's the mechanism to it? There's the issue about the cost sharing, which the World Health Organization was referring to. But what's required from the Ghanaian side?
It's just like the Deputy Director General actually highlighted. These are staggered. They will not withdraw the funding source suddenly. And they look at our strength, they look at our budget and our ability to pay. And as our economy gets strong, and I'm sure that there are other factors that they take into consideration. So looking at all these factors, that's when they negotiate, and I'm sure Ghana government also has the opportunity to negotiate with Gavi. They sit down yearly, talk about what we can support and what we cannot support. So they sort of come in with support where we have shortcomings. But eventually, as he said, we need to work towards that. And all of us, and I appeal to Parliament, for instance, to be able to provide the needed support in terms of providing funding. We have actually also appealed that if it's possible, and we think it's possible that the Parliament and all others should look into ensuring that if the money is coming from a reliable source like the Consolidated Fund, we have made that appeal. And in that case, we know that it's going to be assured. We know the challenges NHIS releasing funding being released to NHIS, and subsequently NHIS also releasing the funds to government. But I'm sure there are other mechanisms that indeed the government, I'm sure, will look at how to resolve these issues. And they are the experts in these areas to be able to handle the procurement and then the finance.
And I must state that conversation with the Deputy DG of the World Health Organization, there's another leg to that conversation which we haven't put out here, the portion about the calls for a targeted immunization for persons who may have missed that window at the time we're experiencing the shortage. The advocacy from the World Health Organization is that we go back to carry out that exercise and to protect that population. How do we approach that? Because that must be a difficult task.
Yeah, I guess Ghana has done well. Let's take a step back and look at what we have done. Vaccination immunization program. In fact, the managers of our immunization program, they have really been excellent. They have done pretty good. But for the fact that we did not have the vaccines in the system, we will not be sitting here having problems. They have done catch-up, if I can use that terminology, programs before, like immunization days where government put resources into it and then provide vaccine, and then across the country, we go to homes to vaccinate, and then all areas to find kids and vaccinate them. These are things that we have done it before, and then I know the EPI program is excellent. I mean, we are doing excellent. So once this has come up, and they have also, Ghana Health Service actually have highlighted the fact that they are going to do this. So we Pediatric Society have the assurance. I mean, we have faith in the system. and that once we provide the resources needed for this to be done, we know that the catch-up we are going to catch up. It will take a little bit of time. We need to understand that we need to provide them with all the support that they need to go out and then do this. And as you can see from your own news items that you carried since the past few days when the vaccines came in, the public health nurses are available. They are ready to do. They are all excited. Families are also excited hearing that the vaccines are in, thanking God for the vaccines being present in the country. So it's like we are all, the anxiety which has filled the country, especially parents and also pediatric society. We are relieved that we are beginning to see the vaccines coming in, and we hope that there will be more reassurances given by the minister and then also the Deputy Director General.
Since you're talking about what's arriving, there's a need to probe that, because the concern is that we're getting that from neighboring countries, and that's as part of the stopgap measure. How much time do we have?
Yes, that's a stopgap measure. I mean, you heard the deputy, the DG deputy DG actually talking about the difficulty in getting this immediately, even if the funding is available. And I think it's a usual practice that if your neighbor's house is on fire, you help douse the fire, because otherwise, if you don't do that, it can spread to your house. And basically, the fact that our colleagues, the public health, actually also put out a message encouraging government to source from the sub-region those who have stock that they can spare. Okay, they should provide to us, and eventually we restore their backup for them. So these are backups, and I think it's in the right direction. As I said, Pediatric Society's focus is to ensure that we have vaccine in country, and we are hoping that by the time the ones we have in the systems begin to run out, we find vaccines from any other form. Okay, they are all good vaccines as long as it's from a reliable source and can be used to immunize our children. That is what we are focused on looking at.
And I just want to take your thoughts on the science of it. Initially, when the outbreak started, it was somewhere up north. Are we able to explain what's happening down south? Because they were not in the picture initially.
Yeah, so the several factors must have contributed towards that. So the vaccines are not available nationwide, but I'm sure there are places where they were hard hit, they were the hardest hit. There are others with places that had some, and they actually continue to immunize. That's one factor. There's also environmental factors like the weather. This is measles is airborne disease, meaning that we pick it up from the air. So anyone who has the infection and begins to shed it, it's easier to spread it during the dry season where the air is light and carry the virus quite far, as you know. So environmental factors and also lack of immunization and infection prevention, all these things, I think we let our guard down. The other thing I think we also have not focused on is breastfeeding. You know, breastfeeding can give some passive immunization. We have a bit of low breastfeeding practices in Ghana. That's where, in terms of the programs that we are trying to run to bring down the sustainable under 5 mortalities, we know that this is where we are weak. We are weak in ensuring that babies are given breast milk. And this is the nutritious, we're talking about nutrition, helping ensure their nutrition. So several factors actually contribute towards the spread of the disease from different parts of the country to other parts of the country. So as I said, and sometimes also sensitization. Once you sensitize, people might not be thinking about that because measles seems to have being one of the last diseases that we think about if a patient presents with you with a runny nose, cough, and then also skin rash. There are other diseases that can present that way, but in recent past, measles have not been that common. But it could also be that we have measles around, but people have not been sensitized. But since the sensitization, probably we are going to see a bit more, okay, that can also contribute that a bit more of the numbers. So at this point in time, we need to stabilize the system before we start panicking again. We know this is happening. We understand what is going on. We are putting things, interventions in place to ensure that we get ahead of the challenge and then to arrest it. So talking about it's very important that we also focus, just like, again, let me bring us back to COVID time, just like we did for COVID. Let's look for those who have the infection. Let's implement IPC, infection prevention measures, so that the disease does not spread to others, and also ensuring that we get a message across to parents that one of the things they can do, even if they've not vaccinated their kids, is to breastfeed their kids, especially those less than 6 months of age.
Okay, so you mean to say that you support the calls by the World Health Organization that we do a targeted, if I may call it, a revaccination exercise? That may be costly and a difficult task, you agree?
Yes, it may be costly, but the cost of not doing it is much more expensive than investing in that. I mean, we are there. This is what we are doing. We are at a point where we have to do, you have to do it. And if you have to do, you have to do it. And if you want to stop the measles epidemic or spread of measles across the country, this is what we need to do. And again, let me highlight again that, yes, the Deputy Director General has reinforced what Ghana Health Service is planning to do. So once they are planning to do there's reinforcement. So let's support and encourage Ghana Health Service to go all out and ensure that every child who missed the immunization actually gets the vaccine.
And Doc, your message to lactating mothers out there?
My message to lactating mothers is that breast milk is the best for our children. It's a full meal for the child. There's variations for breakfast, variations for snack, variations for snack, lunch, variations for dinner. It's full of water. Children less than 6 months old do not need any other source of nutrition, any other source of water, except breast milk. And if we are able to do this for them up to the age of 6 months, we'll cut down malnutrition, we cut down spread of other infections that are worse, or malnutrition makes it worse, like measles, so that most of our kids will survive if they are even infected. And remember that breast milk also contains what we call antibodies. The mother, because they are exposed or they haven't been vaccinated before, will have antibodies or soldiers against the measles virus. So that is the last, that's our last line of defense if we don't have the vaccine. So my last word is that let's continue to give babies feed them exclusively with breast milk till they are 6 months old, and then when they need beyond 6 months old, we follow up with a child welfare clinic so that they teach us and guide us in what winning food that we can give to the kids. So that's my final word to lactating mothers.
Right. Dr. John Adeviapia, thank you for joining us here on The Pulse. I'm grateful, and we'll see you some other time. Thanks for joining us. On out to the economy, 53.6%. That's where we are now in terms of the inflation figures for last month. Well, it appears to be better when we picked somewhere around 54.1%, raising fears that Ghana's economy may spiral out of control. But now there are indications that it's just not the inflation figures, but also the performance of the Ghana cedi against the US dollar. It's up by some 5%. And it's raising hopes of many that we may get better. But first, let's listen to the government statistician, Professor Samuel Enim, announce the latest inflation figures.
Consumer Price Index for the month of February 2023 stood at 168.7 for the month of February 2023. This compares with the Consumer Price Index of 110.4 for the month of February 2022. Given these two price indices for the month of February 2023 and February 2022, inflation for the month of February 2023 stood at 52.8%. This indicates that prices of goods and services on the average between February 2022 and February 2023 have gone up by 52.8%. that is, prices of goods and services over a one-year period, specifically February 2022 and February 2023, went up by 52.8%. We have sustained the reversal that we started in last month with the upward increase in inflation. It will be recalled that in January 2023, we had a reversal of the upward trend from 54.1% in the month of December 2022 to 53.6% for the month of January 2023. So we have sustained the reversal in the upward trend in inflation rate that we recorded greater part of 2021 and 2022. The difference on a year-on-year basis between January 2023 and February 2023 indicates that prices of goods and services went down by 0.8 percentage points between January 2023 and February 2023. On a month-on-month basis, contrary to the sustained reversal, we saw consumer price index on a month-on-month basis inching up by 0.2 percentage point, as the 1.7% that was recorded in January 2023 went up by 0.2 percentage point for the month of February 2023, increasing to 1.9% for the month of February 2023.
Well, so what's driving this, and why are we experiencing that downward trend? Isaac of VHA's data analyst here at JoyNews is joining us now. Isaac, good news. Obviously, we buy a lot, so I'm very positive about the figures as well. But let's get into the details as to what's driving the figures down.
So usually we look at least three indicators. The first one is the exchange rate situation of the country. And then also we look at, some other factors like, the price of fuel.
Right.
So if you look at exchange rates, for instance, we are not seeing the kind of depreciation we saw last year. If you compare last year, this same period to this year, comparing last year and this year, right. The cedi has been doing relatively well, although it's been fluctuating, but it's been at the 12 cedi mark for a very long time. Unlike last year, where it used to fluctuate between, some discrete points. So you can see the cedi moving from 7 cedis, then boom to 8 cedis. But this time around, it gains and then it also loses. But generally, it's been good. And for fuel prices, for instance, we've seen both petrol and diesel also all going up. We are expecting some additional 3 to 5% a reduction in the price of fuel. So this year, for instance, we've seen about 4 consecutive, drop in price of fuel. The first one was 5%. We saw an additional 8%, another 5%. We are expecting another 5%. So cumulatively, we are hovering around 30% since the beginning.
But at the time we picked, with the figures ranging around 54.1%, all hopes were lost.
All hopes were lost, but we knew that there's going to be a point where we're going to come down. But my fear is that usually if you have such a peak and you're about to turn into a very good curve, we see the curve plateauing. But this time around, we see a very sharp decline. If you see it on the screen.
What's on the screen, sir?
Yeah. So there's a sharp decline. I was expecting that the curve will bend and we see it plateauing before we see such a sharp decline. If you compare the decline we are seeing on the screen right now to what we saw exactly the same period last year,
it's not
exactly. There was a sharp decline last year as well, but we are hoping that the indicators panning out currently is not the same as we saw last year. So last year we saw crude oil prices going up. This year, for instance, crude oil prices are coming down. The cedi wasn't doing relatively well. This year it is doing well. So we are hoping that this different, nature of the difference in the indicators we are seeing will actually see inflation coming down. We are anticipating that we'll see more declines, coming up.
And last year, a couple of months ago, the Statistical Service stoked a lot of controversy when they told us that lingeries and panties were among some of the items that had the highest cost on the market. Is that trend beginning to change?
Well, that trend, if you look at the top 20, items leading the inflation, we've seen some different change actually. So if you categorize them between food inflation and non-food inflation, now we have, inflation for non-food items actually reducing. It's less than the average figure, the headline inflation figure. The headline is 52.8, but we see non-food inflation being around 47%. So generally, it's been good for non-food items like what we were talking about, lingerie and, women and but food inflation is still a little, some small percentage points above the average figure. But one interesting thing is that if you look at the regional breakdown, the only region standing out right now in terms of the inflation rate is the Volta region. It's the only.
And what's
region,
accounting for that?
I may not be privy to the details, but we know that the Volta region is currently the only region with inflation rate below 40%. It's around 37 or 33%. All other regions are having rates some above the headline figure. So Greater Accra, for instance, still has inflation rates of more than 50%, more than 60% in some areas, although the headline figure is now 52.8%. But the Volta region is currently now the only island. It's more or less like the island when you do the regional breakdown.
Okay, I feel like going back home, but not now. Let's talk about the issue about transport, because that's a regulated sector. So although the prices are coming down, it may take some time for it to reflect.
It may. If you look at GPRT, for instance, they're saying, although we've seen fuel prices going down, they want it to go down to a certain level before they apply any reduction in price. We saw the same thing last year when at the dying embers of the year, we saw the cedi gaining so much strength. The GPRT came in that they were expecting that fuel prices would drop from the 23 cedis, the 18 cedis point away to 10 cedis before they come in to do a reduction. So when we saw the significant reduction, we saw GPRT coming in to reduce fuel prices, transport fares. So we are anticipating that if we kind of look at the trend, the trajectory of fuel prices right now, we've seen about 4 consecutive reduction in the price. If we are at the point where GPRT feels that they are at equilibrium and they feel that they can reduce the price, we may also see the reduction in fuel prices translating into reduction in transport fares, and we all will benefit from it if it happens.
So what's the outlook now?
Well, the outlook, we are still looking at the figure, but if we look at our repository and the calculations we've done, we are anticipating or forecasting that inflation will still come down to maybe 50% for the month of March. But it's still not clear yet because, just like I was saying, we wanted to see inflation plateauing. But this time around, we are not seeing that sort of plateauing. We are not too sure because the same thing that is happening now happened March last year or February last year. So we are probably anticipating that it could be a replicate of what happened last year. But the indicators are changing. And so that gives us some form of hope that inflation will be good. The outlook will be good. Maybe we're looking at somewhere 50% for the month of March, coming forward.
Isaac Ajay, data analyst here at JoyNews. The Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, is out since the latest figures have been released. He's been concerned about the fuel prices. He is of the view that the prices will go down further in the coming days.
I've been told that next week, we are likely to see fuel prices fall again as a result of this policy. Next week, it's not actually, Professor has just said it's not that far, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow we will see the decline in prices that we are expecting. I mean, this is remarkable. 2.5 months ago, you are at 23 cedis per liter. Today, you are at 12 cedis and falling. That is a good point. But let me point out that the most important aspect of the gold for oil policy is not just the reduction in fuel price, but the most important aspect is the savings in foreign exchange that the Bank of Ghana will make as a result of the lower demand for forex to import oil. That saving is huge. We are currently importing about 50 to 60% of our oil imports under this policy. The goal is to move to 100%, and that will be done this year. We will see this done with, and we'll work with the BDCs to make this happen. But the savings in foreign exchange, when we do this, will be an annual saving of around $4.8 billion US dollars every year when we get this done. And that means that the oil
And that's the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, backing. That is the Institute for Energy Security. They're also predicting some 3 to 5% reduction at the pump. So definitely monitor the figures and bring you some updates. Let's stay on the economy because the opposition National Democratic Congress is asking government to further cut down on its expenditure, especially in terms of the size of government. Well, Ghana is turning 66, but we're still at the doorstep of the IMF begging for a bailout. In a view to get his thoughts on national development, I caught up with the national chairperson of the opposition National Democratic Congress, who opined that the NPP administration has to do more to deal with our debt overhang, plus demonstrate to the people by cutting down the size of government. Chairman Johnson Asiedu Nketia, thank you for talking to JoyNews. The last time we had a conversation, you called that it was quite a tough time for you, but you're looking very relaxed now. I'm sure you're settling in your new post as the chairperson of the largest opposition party, the NDC.
Thank you very much. It's always been a pleasure being with you. And I'm trying to settle down, as you have said. And so I haven't granted many interviews at all after the election. So it's an opportunity to talk to the media about the second or third time after the election. I've always been on the ground trying to do things that will make it succeed rather than spending time in the media. That's why I miss the media work, but I still think that because of the new situation, I have to be doing
Here's a personal question, though. Do you miss your former role as the General Mosquito himself? Now you're chairperson of the party. Many say you'd have to take a reserved seat and look at things unfold. Has a lot changed for you?
Well, I'm still General Mosquito. And to tell you what, General Mosquito was not given to me because of my position as a General Secretary. It is a title I earned in Parliament even before contesting to become General Secretary. So, never mind, viewers. You can continue calling me General Mosquito.
The General is still the General.
But again, yes, I enjoy talking to the media. And you'll bear testimony that I rarely turn down interviews unless I'm under serious time pressure. But now, I need to step back and allow my successor to also come up and work. I don't want him to be always under my shadows. That's why I've laid back a little to allow him to also perform.
Okay, let's talk about national development, because Ghana is 66 now. For the very first time, the people of the Volta region hosted this national event. Coincidentally, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, was there a few days before the celebration of the national event. And he started off by raising some concerns about what is supposed to be national for all of us, a national celebration as it's supposed to be, Ghana's Independence Day. He's raising concerns that the celebration is increasingly becoming a partisan affair. Do you share the same concerns?
Yes, I very much share that concern. It is not the national celebrations alone. In fact, it has now descended into practically all social gatherings to which the president or the vice president is invited. I have complained about even funerals or festivals.
Even state funerals?
No, not state, private funerals to which the president or vice president or has been invited to. I don't know whether It is a policy, a national policy, but some way, somehow, efforts will be made to, if you like, edge out other participants. Yes, yes. I've had, cause to complain at some of the key festivals in the country to which President Mahama and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia had been invited. Of course, that was before this presidential primaries. I don't want to be talking as if.
Yes, yes.
It was
so you're putting that in context, that was even
context, before the
contest.
presidential primaries. It happens to be our only surviving former president. So when NDC is being invited to a function, they will invite him, and then we also go together around our former president, the same way as President Kufuor attending a function will attract the presence of, his party executives. And so I've attended about 2-3 festivals where you realize that the master of ceremonies would intentionally be doing things that are clearly disrespectful to the former president. There was an occasion where you go to the festival and then the original program that has been drawn will provide for some address by former president, some address by Vice President Bawumia, and so on. Some way, somehow, in the course of the program, there will be insistence that if they allow former President Mahama to speak, then the Vice President will leave the function.
Really?
And it actually happened in Boko at a festival where I was present. I personally attended a funeral also in Obuasi. The funeral of a former colleague, member of parliament. And so the children came to invite me and the family. I attended. And even getting the opportunity to announce my donation was a problem. Whenever people get up to go and say, look, NDC, the General Secretary, blah, 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 and they call, some dancing group to be singing and all that. So we kept being delayed as if they wanted to urge us out to leave the place in anger or so on. So apparently it all has something to do with the applause when I attend festivals, even those that are organized by the.
So there were lots of people cheering you.
Yes, so they will not allow even the donation to take place. We sent somebody to go and announce our donation. The person stood there for more than 30 minutes. The MC would not allow him to do what he had to. And we had to leave for another funeral. So at some point, I got up myself, breached all protocol, and went and snatched the microphone from the announcer. And I told him that we are here because my former colleague, member of parliament, passed, and his family invited me. I am not attending an MPP function. So if I have to donate, I don't need the permission of his MPP functionaries to announce my donation. And I will not walk away with my donation in anger, because when there is death, it will be carried by the family. So that is just to tell you that even these minor events, they have tried to politicize them. So I have watched Farmers' Day being politicized, National Independence Celebration being politicized. During President Kufuor's time, I persistently attended Farmers' Day celebrations throughout President Kufuor's region. because they will be organized as national functions.
Events.
But now things have changed. Then so if you attend, it's like you are attending an MPP function. So it makes it difficult for people to attend it as a national function. So they are gradually losing its significance.
But the last opportunity that arguably you had admitting the president would have been his address in Parliament during the State of the Nation.
Yes.
When he was moving out, there was the exchange of pleasantries.
Yes.
Did you take the opportunity, for instance, just to express your concerns to maybe the president or some of his appointees who are your good friends in government?
They are all my good friends, but they won't listen. They won't listen. As for advice, I've never denied them of my advice. Even if I don't meet them, I'm sure they have been listening to my radio programs and the type of advice I've been given. And at social events, when we meet, I always will express my frustration about how things are going on. So, yes, but in the Parliament last week, we didn't talk about that. He congratulated me on my election as the national chairman.
But you all turned up anyway. I saw former President John Mahama there together with the leading figures of the NDC. Was it a decision to go, irrespective of the fact that these things are happening at national events?
No, but Parliament, nobody can urge us out of Parliament. So we had to go. And so we went. And it's good we went because at least we had a lot of comic relief.
Comic relief?
Yes, from some of the addresses. At some point, I was wondering whether it was a State of the Nation address or some history lesson or something, you know.
Okay, let's brush through some of the things the president says, for instance. You were there when he said that his government has built, for instance, more roads than any other government is in the history of the Fourth Republic.
Yes.
What was going through you when he was making such a statement?
Well, I felt that maybe he has been misled into saying some of the things that he has been saying. I've been in government before, and we, together with Dr. Kwabranche, have been in charge of a sector before. And when a presidential address was being prepared, the sectors would send the inputs. So, to be fair to the president, he may not personally know everything else that is contained in the document. So, it is easy for his ministers to mislead him. And so, we felt that some of the things he said were not born out of the facts. But we won't blame him alone. We blame the system. So I remember this is not the first time he mentioned this road thing. He had mentioned it, I think, last year.
Yeah, last year as well.
And my response, that year he was saying
over
11,000 kilometers. So I said, I'm not sure the president has the faintest idea about how the length of 11,000. And I said that flying from Accra to London and back, that is what he's talking about. And he claims he has constructed roads. So when you put together, can link Accra and London with a dual carriage. Because in and out
would have been that 11,000 that the president is talking about. And you don't believe that?
Clearly, this is
He says the evidence is on the ground. He's put out a document to prove his words.
This is not the first time I'm looking at MPP documents. I have read a lot of MPP documents. Even now, they continue sending cooking things and presenting to Parliament. We made this point a long time ago when this economy was running into crisis. We kept saying that they were cooking the books. You guys didn't understand that. If you had taken an interest in what was happening and we had stood up to maybe shame and stop them, we wouldn't be where we are now. They were cooking the books to look like they were performing wonders and creating the impression that economy was the best performing economy. And so you see, they are cooking the books. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Now all of a sudden, the bubble has burst. And we are where we are now. We are a junk state. If you compare our status with an individual, it is like undischarged bankrupt person. That's the level we've gotten to. Yes, that's the level we've gotten to. You know, in the mercantile law and others, as an individual, you can get to a point where you can't pay your debts. And so, but you still feel that you have the right to live. And to avoid the harassment of your debtors and so on. So you apply to be declared bankrupt. And once they declare you bankrupt, the law protects you. So none of your debtors can come and harass you for repayment. But what you get into is that you lose your voting rights because you are less of a human being. Then somebody else is appointed to run your life for you. If there is any income-generating venture that you have running, that income will go into the hands of another person, like if you like your headmaster. Right. Will be thinking for you and doing everything for you. So if you are an undischarged bankrupt person, you can't vote. You can't contest for elections. There are a whole lot of things. If you look at the 1992 Constitution, there are a whole lot of things that you cannot do because you yourself have declared that you have messed your life up to a point that you cannot responsibly organize your life. So another person is asked to organize your life for you. As a country, that is where we are.
But the president has been justifying that, and just to paraphrase him, he says we've not been reckless in our borrowing, quote and unquote. Those were the words of the president. He believes that there's evidence to back whatever he's borrowed the money for.
He's not justifying. He's denying the reality. He's still either staying in the state of denial, or is somebody who still think that he can continue to mislead people because of his powers of oratory. Say sweet things about a bad situation. But I always keep saying that rose called by whatever name will still smell sweet. You know that. So, and if you decorate a donkey, it can never turn into a horse. It will still remain an ass. So if we had faced the truth and the reality much, much earlier on, when it was dawning on us, we would have avoided the worst coming. But we keep on denying. And so the situation continues getting worse. And I'll blame people who knew about the situation and for one reason or the other decided not to speak because for fear of harassment or, you know, because of one inducement or the other, they decided, oh, let's keep quiet and mind our business. Let's keep quiet. That's where we are now. You understand? So there were times when we were complaining about this, and people would be saying, no, but we are not politicians. It is you who should complain. We are not politicians. You remember my caution when I was talking to the media, right, that now you think that it is our responsibility. We will come to a point where you feel the heat no matter which profession you are engaged in. When they were doing this haircut, did they identify and isolate investments made by media men? We are all inside. Did they identify and isolate investment made by the clergy or anybody? We are all inside. So we are coming back to Plato and Socrates.
And I recall speaking to you somewhere last year.
Yes.
You were making some recommendations, and as part of it, you called on government to, for instance, cut down on expenditure.
Yes.
I recall that point
Yes.
vividly.
Very well.
Yet, the president has had the opportunity to do a reshuffle. He's done that. And what we see is that the number is either being maintained or there's a little add-on. The NDC says that it will not back that process. Don't you feel that you may stifle his government some more and derail what's already, as you're terming, being run into the ditches?
I'm happy you are referring to that interview.
Right.
If you remember, I made two strong recommendations. That one, there seems to be lack of trust between government and the governed. So if we are to get out of the mess, there must be changes and new people brought on board. And that if we allow the same people, finance minister, chairman of economic management team, and other people who are responsible for this mess, if we then say that we are professing solutions and we are going to rely on these same people who created the mess in the first place to take us out of the problem, they have lost the confidence of the people. So it is going to be extremely difficult. So the president should work at that loss of confidence. That's the beginning point, otherwise we cannot make progress. It was way, way before his 80 or so plus MPs came to repeat what I had warned about more than 6 months earlier.
Right.
Then I made the second point that government running a country can be seen as running a small business. If it is a manufacturing company, you have a type of resources that go into production of the items that you will be selling. And those are the items you sell to make profit to sustain the business. Now, then you have overheads. That is the monies you spend on management and other things.
Operational costs.
Operational costs and other things. So if you get to a point where the overheads, the money you spend, you pump into overheads, far exceed the money that goes into production on the production floor, then that company is in trouble. I mentioned it. Nobody listened. When you come to the running of government, you have the productive sector, you have the workers, and the other functionaries down there who actually move the economy. And then you have what I will call the politicians and the others.
And the appointees.
Appointees, judiciary, whatever. Running the elections and all those things could be considered as overheads. So if you come to a point in time where the overheads far exceed the investment that goes into the generation of income to run the country, you are in trouble. And in our peculiar situation, you see, we are having a youth bulge economy.
Right.
As we sit, I believe that the under 18 or 18 or maybe under 20
It's far more.
Far more than any segment of the population. Then besides that, you also have over 60 who are retired. So the burden of both the youth who are not employed yet and the retirees and those in active population who cannot find employment all constitute a burden that will be carried on the working population. So if you are not careful, and with the working population carrying all this burden, you go and add overheads, big government, several ministers, increasing number of DCs, increasing number of presidential staffers, appointees of whatever sort, appointing chief executives of ports that are at the design stage, like Keta Port and the others. Establishing structures in spite of our very excellent structures for decentralization. You go and superimpose on the decentralized structures development authorities, spending money on keeping them in office and so on. You can only land where we have landed. So the president and his government has been extremely reckless. And I felt ashamed. I was almost hiding my face when our president declared openly that they have not been reckless. If you have not been reckless and you were borrowing responsibly, where we are, is that how responsible borrowing leads people? Is that where responsible borrowing leads people? You borrow to a point where you cannot repay the loans, and you are still claiming that you didn't borrow recklessly.
So you were concerned about the overhead, but some say that the president was simply, in this latest set of appointees he's named, replacing some of the persons who've left government. For instance, take a look at the Trades Ministry. It became vacant. The Agric Ministry became vacant. And so the president, for instance, was appointing these new nominees to fill some of these spots. But you've asked your MPs, for instance, not to support the process. What's accounting for that decision?
We have never minced words about the size of government. And indeed, the MPP itself, supporters, are worried about the size of government. Because if you have come to a point where, as a country, you cannot pay your debts, and you are going out there asking for debt forgiveness, at least you have a responsibility to cut down on your own expenditure, the expenditure that led you into that crisis. So if you do that, you would have demonstrated the willingness and the capacity to solve your own problem. So it is in order, when you appeal to outsiders to help you, to implement the solution. But you are in this mess and you are blaming everybody apart from your own self. You operated a bloated government, and this continued to live in ostentation, hiring jets and so on, to go and borrow money from prime ministers who ride bicycles to supermarkets. And you are flying in jets where you have facilities of bathing in the air. Don't you think that those countries you are approaching, the monies you are going to borrow or you want forgiven, they were monies contributed by their own taxpayers? And if their leaders have decided to lead or live the way you are living, do you think that there will be any money left over for you to go and borrow? So you must demonstrate that, yes, Ghana is in crisis. So when we are in crisis, maybe this number of ministers can run the system.
Chairman,
So
you are saying will not back down on that, of course, directive you've given to your MPs not to support this new
in the interest of the nation.
But these are critical sectors. Agric, for instance, you have trade, you have an experienced hand. As, of course, you met in Parliament, I'm sure, Katie Hammond, who's being nominated, for instance, by the President. These are critical sectors, you agree?
It is not about the competence or otherwise of the persons involved at all. It's about the numbers. We are saying that our national budget and the circumstances we are in now, we need to cut down costs. and the way to cut down costs is to reduce the number of ministers. Leadership is about setting priorities. You can look at the human resource available to you, and then you choose the best 50, 60, or 70 that will do the work. Those you consider to be non-essential in the time of crisis like this, you let them go home.
Is that what they would take for you to accept this new nominees?
Well,
for instance,
we have said reduce the number.
Okay.
And you are not reducing it. And some people have resigned, effectively reducing the number. Why should we cooperate with you to still fill those vacancies to bring us back to where they were before the resignation?
So what
if
will it
we
take
think
the
that
party?
the number is too large? So Katie Hammond is my friend. Many of the appointees, some of them fantastic people. But it's not about their competence or lack of it. It's about the number of ministers. So let the president come and say that, well, we like Katie Hammond, we like this man, we like that man. They are good material. I'm reducing the number by sending off A, B, C, D, maybe 10, 20.
Okay.
So allow me to take these 5. Then we are in good business.
So on that basis, you would allow
anything
your
that
MPs
will
to support
reduce,
that?
anything that will go to further the national interest of reducing number of ministers will fall for it.
Do you have an ideal cut-off point or number that, well, we should be dealing with at this point?
Why should we be advising the president when he has shown that he's impervious to advice?
Well, I'm asking because you've said that you want the numbers to further go down.
You said you are in crisis.
Right.
So the first thing for you to do is analyze your own expenditure.
Okay.
And see what jobs can be combined, what appointees we can live without in the time of crisis, which are the critical appointees that we need to maintain to lead the charge and lead us out of this crisis. Okay. It is the responsibility of government to look at that one and make a determination. But if the government still insists that the exact number of ministers I have, they are okay, when they, in the opinion of Ghanaians, the government is over-bloated, we are not going to be responsible for the, partly responsible for the bloating. If we have the opportunity, we will help the government to cut down costs, because that is what we think is in the national interest.
Are you not worried that you may not have the parliamentary numbers to support that? Be it when we have a situation where the committee report is laid before plenary. Are you not scared that as the NDC you may not have the numbers to block these new nominees from going through?
Not at all. You know, we are saying that we believe that the government is bloated. So we will not support the government to continue with the bloating. If all our MPs vote to support that position, whether the people get passed or not is none of our business, because we have responsibility to Ghanaians to prove to Ghanaians that we have not contributed to the mess. We did all that is in our power to stop it, but the numbers we have could not continue the battle. That is different from NDC getting up and voting to approve those ministers and come outside Parliament to say that the government is bloated.
You don't want to be a part of this?
No, because we believe that that is not in the interest of Ghana. So that is all that we are.
I'm just wondering what will happen to, say, an MP that will defy your orders. The argument has been bandied around. For instance, we've heard from the Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Penyumakin, who says, well, the political party does not have that constitutional control over the MPs because by law, they represent the constituencies and not, per se, the NDC as a political party. So they have their own rights to vote.
I'm sorry, Afenyo got it all wrong. The problem with that type of argument is that he sees NDC sitting somewhere and our MPs also sitting elsewhere. The NDC party includes the MPs. So when we take a policy position, it must not be seen as if it is being dictated from headquarters. And because everybody in the party shares that belief. So we don't need to go and coerce people around. The declarations we make is just to assure our followers that yes, we know we believe in this, and we are assuring the population that we will stand by those principles. It must not be taken that our MPs see themselves as not part of the party, but party is just at Abraka headquarters who cook something and go and run it down the throat.
So what you're saying, for instance, is that in this context, for instance, about the nominees, it wasn't even forced. Your
No. The MPs came here.
You didn't order the MPs around.
No. The MPs came, leadership came, and we sat together, looked at what we consider can be the party position, which is consistent with our philosophies and our core beliefs and so on. And we generated the conclusion together. You understand? So nobody should say, I have heard it being bandied all over the place. I said, Nketia is a dictator.
You've ordered the
he has
MPs,
ordered the MPs, and I said, we don't have any problem until we see I said, Nketia coming to sit in the gallery and so on. They have no idea what takes place in our party and how our decisions are arrived at. In most of the cases, when something is laid in Parliament, our leadership will come and say that, look, this is an issue which we think, it's a policy issue that touches on our core beliefs. So how do we go about it? And we take those decisions together. So please disabuse your minds from the fact that we have given instructions and we are worried about whether they will be followed or they will not be followed. And you can only be thinking about sanctions that an MP would defy. Why should that MP defy when it is in his interest as well? So it's not like that.
But Chairman, perhaps the reason for which they may be saying that is that this is not the first time you've taken such a decision or directed your MPs to go a certain way. The latest one you've done is that you have issued that directive again to your members of parliament to first of all suspend all of their internal campaignings at the constituency level, suspend that and return to the House. Yes. Make sure that they remain in parliament until the end of the month. That's control, isn't it?
No, but have you tried to find out where that decision came from? It has to be signed by the chief executive of the party. But it doesn't mean that that is a decision of the chief executive of the party, the general secretary. It doesn't mean that.
It's not control?
No, I am saying that. You know who initiated that? That move was even initiated from parliament. Okay?
Right.
And brought to our attention here. And we looked at the issues and decided on the best way forward. Because we have a primaries to run.
Right.
And in the primaries, because we are a democratic party, we allow people to contest, for the seats.
Right.
But we have a responsibility to be fair in our dealings.
And be sure to catch that full interaction with Johnson Atiru Nkita on all of our social media platforms and also online at myjoyonline.com. But you're still with us here on The Pulse on the Joy News channel. When we return, we'll talk about the Impact Makers Award. You need to hear about this. We'll tell you about it after this break. And you're welcome back to the Pulse. Let's talk about the Joy News Impact Makers Award, because this is a social project aimed at recognizing people, celebrating ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their society just to change lives and to improve their communities in which they find themselves. Your credible news source, Joy News, is of course bringing that project to you to celebrate people in your community who are changing lives in all spheres: education, technology, you name them. Of course, if you have anybody in mind, have you nominated them already? And why, of course, are we doing and carrying out this project of the Joy News Impact Makers Award? Guess what? I'm being joined now by Max Sogah, General Manager, Customer Care and Sales here at Multimedia. And of course, MFI Leah Tiamwa is the project lead. They are all draped in that Impact Makers, and it's so colorful. It tells you what's coming up. Max, why now? And what's this whole idea about the Impact Makers Award?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, like you rightly said in your intro, it's about ordinary people doing ordinary things, making impact in the communities where they find themselves. So the award is about people making impacts. I mean, and we say impact makers are people who, despite the circumstances and the situation around them, they still go out of their way to help people, to help others, to improve life, to improve living condition of others, regardless of the circumstances or the economic situation around them. And there are a lot of people out there who are doing this and who are not being recognized. And so we have taken upon ourselves that, look, we are a media organization. Every day, our network carries stories of these people who are making these small changes in the communities they found themselves in. And so we said, look, why don't you bring these people forward and then celebrate them, recognize them and celebrate them. So that's why we are into this, and that's what the award is about, recognizing those ordinary people making those small changes that are impacting positively in the lives of people.
And Max, I'm glad that you're talking about stories, because if I recall, Kojo Brace, my colleague, doing the story about a young man in the Western region who was using the Shamfan machine, which ordinarily would have been used for illegal mining, and he's generating power with that.
Exactly. It's interesting. And as Max said, the idea is to motivate these people. Yes, this gentleman is able to do this much.
Right.
You can imagine how much more he'll be able to do if you and I give him that recognition and support.
Right.
If we introduce him to the right people, the right network of people who will be able to invest in what he's doing so that he can impact a greater number of people. So that's the whole idea. In 2016, I told a story of a young gentleman in Mamobi here, and this is the heart of Accra. He runs a small school, and what he does is that he doesn't collect school fees from the children.
Wow.
Because looking at the living conditions of the
people,
parents there, you can't look in their face and tell them they should pay school fees. But that notwithstanding, these children have the basic right to education, so they must be in school. Realizing that need, what this guy does is that every morning he wakes up and goes from house to house, to check on these children, pick them, take them to his facility and teach them and then take them back. How many people will be able to do that? I'm telling you that, but for this guy, these children wouldn't have had a taste of education. They don't know what it means to go to school or to be taught something in the classroom, on the blackboard, or write something. So it's interesting for such people. You just want to give them the space. You want to tell those in the education sector that these are the people who have the hearts, who are ready to do the job. So what you need is that invest in them, partner them, give them the platform so that they can do more.
And Max, when we say this is open to all spheres, is it really for everyone?
Yes, it's for everyone. There's no age limit. Okay, it's for everyone. I'm sure there's a young man's story we are talking about. The man in the West, the guy in the West. I don't know how old he is. Yes. Could be 16, 17, 18. Yeah. So it is open. I mean, it's not about age, it's not about education, it's not about status society. Just those ordinary people making the impact, irrespective of your age. Because I always say, leadership is not about influence. Okay, it's about impacts. Leadership is not about age, it's about influence and impact. And so, no matter your age, once you are making that impact in that community, people are being inspired, you are qualified to be part of this award scheme.
So what will be the format? And how many people will be celebrated?
Okay, maybe MFR wants to talk.
Quickly.
Yes, so at the moment we have advertised an email asking the people or the public to submit entries. When you do that, you get an automatic reply, and then it gives you a form to fill in the details of the individual you are nominating. That form will come back to us. The email is impact.makersawards.
Okay, let's take that slowly.
Impact.makersawards.
Awards is impact,
right.
IMPACT, impact.makersaward, makers, MAKE.
Oh, we have that on the screen.
Exactly.
Right,
so impact.makersawards at myjoyonline.com.
Impact.makersawards
at myjoyonline.com. So we are encouraging you to send in your entries as soon as possible. There's a team which is going through the entries that we are receiving, and then we will select the finalists who will then.
Do we know the number of people we're celebrating?
Yes.
We want to keep that as a surprise.
Oh, no, it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise. I think that,
I just want to...
as she rightly said, we have about 200 entries, but we are getting more.
Okay.
So by the end of the day, we'll celebrate 10.
Okay.
And out of the 10, there will be an overall winner. So it's a very simple thing. 10, and then there will be an overall winner.
Competition.
Yeah.
Yes. But you see, you can nominate, I mean, those who are making those changes, those making the impact in the communities, they can nominate themselves, or people, the members of the community can nominate them to be part of this thing. So it's not a chance of being part of the 10 to be celebrated, or the overall winner, JoyNews Impact Maker of the Year.
Right.
And I also want to say that this is the maiden edition.
Okay.
So we look forward to doing
Expanding,
this every other year.
Oh, yeah.
And we hope that each year is going to be bigger and better. And so you shouldn't shy away at all from putting in your entries now. Yes, your candidate might not be selected as a winner for this year. That does not mean
But
that
even
the
a
person is
nomination
not
alone,
making.
yeah,
Yes, that does not
yeah.
mean that your nominee is not making an impact.
Right.
No.
Right.
But this is just something to let you know that we appreciate whatever contribution you are doing in your little corner to make Ghana a better place.
And we'll actually even acknowledge all those who have been nominated.
Okay.
For people to know, okay, this person was nominated for this year's award. We don't acknowledge
So the
everybody.
names will even be out there. At least we'll know their profile and what they have to offer.
Exactly.
But what's at stake in terms of the prize, the package for the 10 that will be celebrated? I feel like being on that list already.
Look, the approach this time is to make sure that, look, whatever the person is doing, the award should go to help the person to improve on whatever he or she is doing in the community. Okay. And so we wait until we get the nominees, and then we can announce the appropriate package that will help the person to improve on what he or she is doing. So I cannot announce it here until I have a fair idea of the 10.
We need to know what you are into.
Exactly.
So if you're in agric, we'll give you something that will help you in your space. If you're into medicine, we'll help your health. We'll give you a prize that will help you deliver better. So that's what we're going to do, because we want the prizes to be relevant to what the people are doing on the ground.
And in fact, this is the first time I'm hearing it. Tailor-made packages.
Exactly.
It's better. It's far better.
Exactly.
It's far better.
And as much as possible, we do not just want to recognize or celebrate you, then that's it for you. You stop what you're doing. We want you to continue.
Right.
And the only way we can get you to continue is to support you with the resource, the logistics, the materials you need to be able to do that. So that's why we are looking at a tailor-made packages so that you can sustain whatever impact you're making.
Obviously, they'll be celebrated. When is the party, and how can we be part of that? That jubilation. We need to celebrate with them and enjoy.
Unless I can give you a cue.
Okay.
It will be in May.
Okay.
I know May is big for us in multimedia.
Right.
So I think this is just enough for today.
Okay, so for those out there who, of course, want more information, perhaps partnerships, right? Because there are some institutions that may be willing to partner you. Are you open to that idea?
Absolutely. I think
Oh yeah, we are open. We are open for partnership. We are open for support. We are open for sponsorship. So we are open.
Yeah.
We are open.
Corporate Ghana, everyone is invited, regardless the sector you are working in, be it education, be it technology, any area at all, agric, as long as you think that there are certainly people working in that area who are impacting life, who are making great changes in people's lives. And so you would want to support them. So in whatever way, and also you get opportunities to be also to be able to promote yourself and what you do. Yeah, so everyone is invited.
Okay, how much more time do we have in terms of putting out the nominations? I mean, sending the mail. It's on the screens right now.
Impact.makershours at myjoyonline.
Right. How much time do we have?
We are closing entries by next week.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
By end of next week.
Yeah, end of next week we are closing our entries. By which time the selection team, which is already in the process, because the entries are coming in drones every day. I'm sure that would have been done, and they will hand it over to the judges to decide the finalists for the award scheme.
Okay.
Then the party starts.
And Max, if you have a message for those who may be having doubts, well, will my, of course, nominee be accepted or not? What message do you have for such a person out there? I mean, someone's making change. I'm positive about the person, but well, this is a big platform. I don't know if you'll be selected. What message will you have?
Everybody stands an equal chance of selection. So we are fair. I mean, if you know the profile of the judges, it's going to be a very fair and transparent process. So once you are nominated and you go through and you are selected, we'll celebrate you. If you are not lucky to be part of the finalists, the final 10, we will still celebrate you. We'll acknowledge you, and we'll tell your story to the people out there, for people to know that you are making an impact in that small community you find yourself in, irrespective of the challenges that you may be facing yourself. So, I mean, it's a fair, transparent process. I'll be very, very transparent about it. Indeed. We'll communicate and we'll celebrate whoever is nominated, whether the person is part of the final 10 or not.
And we'll be happy to celebrate them. MFA, your message to them?
Yes, so I know people will be asking, what should I expect on the day of the events?
Yes.
So yeah, you're going to know more about the finalists. If you're the 10, what do they do? Where are they? How many people have they impacted? We will tell you about that, and then you get to know exactly what they'll be going away with in terms of the packages. You'll be meeting their family members, you'll be meeting corporate Ghana, and then you also have the chance of meeting key personalities here from the multimedia group who will be encouraging you to be celebrating along with you as well. It's going to be a packed night, and we entreat all who are really to be part of this award scheme, because it's going to be fun.
And indeed, it's going to be fun. You need to send out your nominations fast, because these people would never wait for you. They'll go ahead and celebrate the ones they have. But I'm grateful, Max and MFA, for joining us here on The Pulse. We'll see them again when the list is out. But let's focus on our next conversation, because the Alliance for Women in Media is partnering with the Canadian High Commission to deal with matters relating to equity for women in the media space. Joining us via phone now is Shamima Muslim, a leading figure of that movement. Thanks, Shamima, for your time here on The Pulse. So why equity for women in the media?
Blessing, and good evening to your viewers as well. You would recall that 8th of March every year is dedicated to celebrating women. So it's International Women's Day, the 8th of March. But the entire month of March is Women's Month globally, and it's really a month to highlight the issues that women face in various fields of endeavor: formal, informal, workplace, domestic violence, all the gamut of issues that women really face in the society, and also representation in leadership positions across board. So every year, ALMA also commemorates the International Women's Day with a stakeholders engagement forum. This year, the global theme is Embrace Equity, and the UN theme is Digital Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. So why equity? Because we still haven't reached anywhere close to parity between men and women in terms of representation, in terms of work, in terms of workplace safety issues. So all of the various things that mitigate against the growth and advancement of women are equity issues. And we're saying that we must all embrace equity, because the evidence shows that when all of your staff, when both men and women are working to full capacity and reaching their fullest potential, then our collective value would increase, okay? But if the system is rigged against its females in the society to the extent that they are always unable to put up their best because of all the other things that hold them back, institutionally, systemically, culturally, politically, then the country loses. So that is why we are talking equity, and that's why we are talking specifically equity for women in media.
Where really is the disparity? What's the focus for you? Is it much more about allowing that the platforms are inclusive of women across the country, which we rarely do? I must make that confession. And it's not as though it's deliberate. It's much more about the system in which we find ourselves. Or is it more about the practitioners? Where's your focus this year?
So our focus this year is on media owners and media managers, because obviously to whom much is given, much is expected. I always try to use the family setup to illustrate the importance of imbibing equity principles. If you take a typical family, for example, there's a mother, there's a father, there are children, there may be old people, there may be sickly children, there may be children with special needs and disabilities. There may be aging parents who are suffering from dementia. So if you take the family unit, because every member of the family is different, you would have to necessarily treat each member of the family the way that, in the way that they are different, and you must meet each person's needs equitably for the family unit to remain peaceful and cohesive and a happy one. So you can't say that, everybody is eating pepper in this family, so even people who are suffering from ulcer have to eat, pepper. My mother-in-law was living with us for a long time. She doesn't eat pepper. So when we cook our food, we have to cook her food without pepper. That is equity. That is recognizing people's peculiar challenges and needs and meeting those needs at their point and meeting them at the point of their needs. So you asked about why we are focusing on media managers and media owners. A couple of years ago, ALMA released the first baseline status of women in Ghanaian media report. We tried to look at a number of things just to understand who are the women in the media, what are their profiles, what do they do, what are their challenges. When we looked at the leadership level, we had only 1% of women in top management, positions. Take multimedia, for example. You have a lot of wonderful women, and multimedia is one of the most progressive media houses, I must add, because I see the effort and the opportunities they give to both men and women. But even that, at your leadership level, if you go onto your website right now, your top executive leadership is all male. Emma Morrison used to be the only female on, and since she left, there's been no replacement. So your top executive is all female. If you look at other media houses and organizations, including the leading organizations, there's disparity at the top level. But when you tune on your television and somebody tells you that there is disparity in Ghana's media between men and women, you won't believe it. Because the face of Ghana's media landscape is feminine. The news, the entertainment, and a lot of the programs you would now find females. Even traditionally hardcore politics that you usually would not have found women, even as, early as like 10 years ago when I was in the media, you could count the number of us who were doing hardcore political programs. Now, morning shows have female voices. It didn't used to be the case for so long. Evening current affairs has female voices. It didn't used to be the case. So we have made some gains, but as you grow along the media industry, you see that it begins to taper in favor of only the men, all because of the other challenges. I had to take time off media because I could no longer combine the time schedule with my growing family of 4 toddlers. It was almost impossible for me to balance, work and family commitments. And these are important commitments. The reproductive role of women is very important to ensure future security of the labor force. And it's not a choice that many women have. In fact, if you reach a certain stage in the media and you don't marry, you don't have children, it becomes an insult on you. And people would use it to abuse you because they think you're not a full woman. So these are some of the practical things. If you look at the pay disparity, there are women who are earning less than men for doing similar, if not the same kind of work. If you look at educational opportunities for women, there is disparity because sometimes women are unwilling to leave their families and, seek advanced education. Also, sometimes their managers are unwilling to release them to participate in capacity building programs when indeed they are the same people who say that women don't have skills. Some colleagues of mine have been in media organizations for over a decade, and they are still at the same level, and yet they have won several awards, for journalism work. And yet the organization doesn't see them to have the leadership potential. So if you think that your women do not have leadership potential, what should you do as a progressive leader? You must identify those who have competency. If they have competency without corresponding leadership skills, you must teach it because leadership can be taught. And people have learned to be good leaders and they have been able to deliver. Women naturally are leaders. They are able to multitask. They are able to do a lot of things. So if you build their confidence and you put them on a certain fast track, management trainee program, and you encourage them, because sometimes we don't even trust that we can do the job, and that's part of the inequities in the system. The system is socialized us so much that we are not confident even when we are capable. So it's up to the leader, it's up to the owner to say that in my media organization there is imbalance. So what should I do to bridge the gap? What should I do to bridge the imbalance? What can I do to support both men and women to all grow and thrive? And that's a very long response to your simple question.
Anyway, it tells us what we're expecting tomorrow, equity for women in the media space. Shamima Muslim will be on that panel together with Professor, of course, we have the likes of Elizabeth Ohene and others that will be speaking tomorrow. We'll be on the lookout for that. Thanks, Shamima, for joining us. But let's focus on ADR now, because Justice of the Court of Appeal, Her Ladyship Justice Angelina Mensah Homia, is asking aggrieved persons to make use of alternative dispute resolution as a means of getting justice. In her view, it will help deal with the long delays in the justice delivery system. There's more in this report for you.
The ADR Week aims to create a platform for the ADR Directorate of the Judicial Service to engage with the public. Through this event, the Directorate seeks to inform citizens about the existence of ADR within the court system, its relevance in seeking justice, and how individuals can utilize this option to their advantage. Speaking at this legal year terms ADR Week, Justice of the Court of Appeal, Her Ladyship Justice Angela Mensah Homia, in her address, indicated that alternative dispute resolution offers several advantages over the litigation system in the resolution of disputes.
Generally, ADR, and in particular the court-connected ADR, offers several advantages over litigation or the adversarial system of resolving disputes. The first is that it allows parties to have more control over the outcome of their disputes. The parties are involved in every aspect of the process. ADR allows parties to work together to come out with solutions that meet their individual needs and interests, especially where relationships need to be preserved. Comparatively, the traditional court procedures are often slow and rigid, and some cases may take years to resolve. On the other hand, court-connected ADR offers a much quicker resolution to disputes, and thereby reducing the time and resources required to resolve legal issues.
She also added that limited awareness and education about ADR have become a major challenge in resorting to this approach.
Many court users are either not aware of the benefits of ADR or do not understand how it works. Yes, they have heard of the court-connected ADR. You will see the offices with the bold inscription, court-connected ADR and what have you, but they don't really appreciate how it works and the benefits. And it takes efforts to educate the court users and the citizenry as a whole on the benefits as I've already enumerated. I do not think creating awareness during the celebration of the ADR week alone is sufficient, and we need to move a step further. Another major challenge is the remuneration of the mediators. This is a challenge which the Judicial Service is working around the clock to resolve.
Director of ADR, Alex Nati, urged individuals who have disputes suitable for alternative dispute resolution to take advantage of this opportunity.
We urge every court user, anybody who has a case in court which is amenable to ADR, should actually not let this week pass without trying to test the efficacy of ADR. It works, and it saves time, it saves cost, and so it is in the interest of anybody who is seeking a resolution to his dispute to try it.
During the last ADR week held in November 2022, 211 cases were referred and 88 settled, representing 42% settlement rate. For JoyNews, Esther Nkrumah's report read to you.
The U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Virginia Palmer, has lauded the Accra Initiative approach to ending violent extremism as one of the best ways of dealing with the root causes of the problem. She believes that African-led solutions to Africa's problem is one of the ways of ending violent extremism. She was speaking on the Visitors' Day of Operation Flintlock 2023, which is a U.S.-led military exercise to train men on the ground.
After days of training, some military personnel from different countries taking part in a simulated rescue of a kidnapped government official. It was to put to use what they had been practicing for days. The U.S. Special Operations Command Africa conducted Flintlock 2023 from March 1 to 15 in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. In a digital press conference on the purpose of Flintlock, Commander of the U.S. Special Operations Command Africa, Rear Admiral Jimmy Sanders, said the U.S. is focused on the threat of Al-Qaeda's continued expansion through the Sahel. He said the concern is that Al-Qaeda will continue to grow and expand through the Sahel and threaten coastal West African countries like Ghana. Hence, it is the primary focus area or threat it is trying to address. Rear Admiral Jimmy Sanders said it is also to deal with maritime threats from the Gulf of Guinea, everything from illegal, unregulated fishing to more common threats of piracy.
So it's a two-way exchange. We're here as partners. We listen to what the African nations want to do, and we help them address the multiple security threats that they have. I'm particularly excited about this year being right here with a special operations training group that's maritime. We haven't done that before, which is another unique element of this. So we're looking at preparing to help our African partners address threats to the north from violent extremist organizations, and also to help them address the multiple threats and challenges that we have in the maritime environment.
The U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Virginia Palmer, says these kind of collaborations are important in eliminating terrorism and violent extremist organizations from our world.
We applaud President Akufo-Addo's efforts to expand the Accra Initiative's work. That work, those solutions that are by Africans and for Africans are extremely important. And the Accra Initiative's regional approach is the type of vision that is needed for coastal West Africa and the Sahel. Complex problems in the region require African-led and African-sourced solutions. The U.S. continues to support bilateral and regional capacity-building initiatives to counter the threat of terrorism and violent extremism with partners in civil society, defense, law enforcement, and the judicial systems. Our commitment to security in the region is long-term. But today's exercise is also very timely, as we don't have to look very far to see security threats in this region. We know security concerns cannot be fully addressed through military force, however. If we want lasting solutions tackling root causes of conflict, economic, inter- and intra-communal schisms, weak institutions, and competition over resources, we have to address those threats as well. Improved security conditions create the stability required to attract foreign investment and encourage economic growth. I think that's something very important as Ghana finds itself in an economic crisis. These exercises are ever more important, in fact, because security creates the conditions for economic growth.
Commander Joint Task Force Flintlock 2023, Colonel Richard Mensah, says Ghana must continue with collaborations with the U.S. and other partners to deal with the threat of terrorism.
We cannot throw our hands in the air, saying that because terrorism is happening and we are not achieving much, we should go to sleep. Special operations are not created in emergencies. We must continue to train. Training is everything, and everything is training. We have to get our guys ready to be able to deal with the terrorists. So this exercise helps us to build that partnership, exchange intelligence and ideas and experience to be able to surmount some of these challenges. Thank you.
And you're with us here on The Pulse. We'll be back after this break. That's all we have for you in this package of The Pulse. Log on to myjoyonline.com. There's a lot of stories there for you to catch up on. And next is Business Life, which will be coming your way here on the JoyNews channel. I'm Sogah. Thanks for watching. We're back same time tomorrow.